tons of other little stuff that basically I don't ever have to do with Hall of Fame. With Hall of Fame, I send them a purchase agreement, an assignment, buyer's contact info, seller's contact info, and then they tell me when closing is.
That's super easy.
Yeah, I send one email one time.
Yeah.
And if there's issues, obviously they let me know.
Right.
But if there's no issues, they'll just say, hey, yep, seller's signing this day, buyer's signing this day. Hey, it funded, come get your check. Or do you want it sent to you? Or do you want a wire?
So they don't give a shit about assignments or anything. Because I've been to a couple that
there's a few that are getting out of
get really weird about it, including the one that I forgot to write that down too. The sorry, but that's title company is important. Have a good title company.
Yep.
We use Title I now in Canton. Mm-hmm. Monica is the lady I go to. She's never given us any problems at all, but I mean, I'll definitely try to.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I've used probably a dozen different title companies.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've done a dozen deals with them now, and they've made everyone about as smooth as. There's still hiccups.
But every deal has something. Yeah.
But
do they make the seller sign the assignment? No. So they don't care if the seller knows what's going on as far as this.
Well, because our purchase agreement says that we have the option to assign this.
Right. Yeah.
So that's all they need.
Okay. So because even though mine says that, some title companies say, well, no, we got to make, and that's what happened with the deal I'm going to talk about today. There was the whole back and forth because.
Yeah, so far they have not made that. It wouldn't surprise me if they do.
Right.
Because that would kill a lot of deals.
Well, for me, that's the hardest thing about wholesaling.
Yeah.
Is making the seller comfortable with us selling to somebody else. Mm-hmm. That's the hardest part.
And sometimes they're fine with it, but I bet if some sellers knew how much money was to be made,
and that's the problem.
They would back out.
If they see the assignment, they're like, well, why the fuck are you making $20,000 on this deal?
Right. Yep.
And
that could absolutely kill some deals.
They can kill a lot of deals.
Yeah.
In which case you have to double close, but I mean then you have to pay 2 closing costs, which then could kill a deal. Make it less worth it.
Well, yeah, exactly. You definitely can't do as thin of deals, and you need transactional funding. Then you actually have to raise money or pay for.
Or you pull from a line that you have, but even still, then that's.
Yep. Even still, you gotta transact that too. Right. Yeah, I would do a lot less deals if I couldn't do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's cool that you found one that won't.
So far, I'm sure it'll change.
Yeah.
But
maybe.
So far, they have been the easiest to deal with, especially on the wholesale side.
That's good.
And they said I know the owners of the title company, and they kind of cut us a little deal. I mean, there's only so many.
It's a volume business.
Yeah. So
it's
they
not something
like
that you can make you a deal on. You know what I mean?
Yep. Basically, they said if you bring all your deals to us, we'll cut you a little deal on each fee, but it's about all. I mean, it's not killer, but it still saves me a couple $100 each time.
Yeah.
When I actually buy, when I'm wholesaling, it just saves my buyer.
Right. And it's more spread that you can take.
Yep. And they'll buy us a gift card every year. Hey, thanks for bringing on
right. Yeah.
Little stuff like that, but
which is good.
And it's just another person that has money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They own a title company, they have a business, they know a lot of connections, they send us deals too. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about Hall of Fame. They've done good so far.
Well, that's good. All right, so today, so this is round 2. Danny and Kyle's. I won't even call this a podcast. This is it's supposed to be a podcast. It will be a podcast, but it's not yet. Right now, it's a video that we're talking to.
Yep.
But we're gonna make it work. So, what we wanted to dive into today was, as you can see, we have long pages of notes on this topic. What was either the worst or the most difficult deal that you have done. And that's the topic for today's podcast, is what is the either worst or most difficult deal that you have done. So we're just going to banter, go back and forth a little bit about that, and how to avoid doing a bad deal. And, I'll kick it off with this. I would rather not do a deal than do a bad deal. And, that I stand by that because it is a pain in the royal ass to do a bad deal. And even though, I wouldn't say that, like, I've ever really lost money on a deal. I have come close, and I have been put through the ringer, and I'll take you through that story in a little bit. But I think we should start with Kyle's, because it's pretty...
and one thing I wanted to bring up before we get into it, it's just like, this is kind of... this is super valuable, because you get to these bad deals, these hard deals, like, this is where the lessons are learned.
Right.
So, like, this is, like, even though I lost money on this deal, like, I learned so much from this deal that, like, for me, I would rather do a bad deal than do no deal. You know what I mean?
If you can learn lessons, that they can be valuable. If you take lessons from them.
Right. So, and then you actually listen to them.
Right.
Yeah, and learn.
Right.
But
that's fair.
Some people just get in that analysis paralysis part of
correct.
They don't
There's
do
a
any deal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's,
so I'm not saying go out there and knowingly do a bad deal, but I'd rather you try and try your best. If you think it's a good deal, then go for it. But sometimes it gets turned bad. I didn't go into this deal knowing it was a bad deal. It just turned that way.
And that's completely fair.
But but I'm just saying there's a lot of value in this, just because learn from our mistakes, and hopefully you don't make these, and that'll save you a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
So you want me to just jump into mine?
Yeah. So just tell me about this. So okay, just at a high level, just to start off. So this was your worst deal that you've done.
Yeah, most difficult and worst.
Okay.
Usually they kind of go hand in hand sometimes, but from a high level, we bought it summer of 2020. I forget the exact dates. From a wholesaler off Facebook. I'm very active on Facebook. I've gotten a lot of deals from there. This wholesaler seemed to be pretty active. I found out later he was very new. That doesn't really... He didn't do anything wrong. It was me. Reached out to him, went and looked. And it was funny, right before I went and looked at this property, I talked to my partner Rocco, and was like, hey, like, where we're at with our cash position and just where everything's at, like, I'd like to start, like, buying some property, start getting a little more aggressive, because overall me and Rocco are somewhat conservative. Like, we rarely, lose money on a deal, and we haven't besides this one. But right before that, I was going to look at like 4 or 5 properties in a span of like 2 days. I'm like, hey, like, I'm going to start getting a little aggressive and like pushing this a little bit. You know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, okay. So it's funny this happened. So this one's in Cleveland, which is not our market. So that's red flag number 1. We didn't have many contacts up there. Multiple issues. We'll stay high level for now. But it was in Cleveland. Got it from a wholesaler off Facebook. We paid $44,000, which he was asking $60,000. So I thought I did a killer job, like getting it down to $44,000. Yeah. So I thought, and then
it sounds like it. At least.
ARV was like 110, 115. It was in a very up and coming part of Cleveland, like the Clark Fulton neighborhood, I think it is. It's right next to Metro Health Hospital, which they were buying up houses and expanding, doing a bunch of construction. Like doctors were moving there.
There you go. Yeah, perfect.
So we were going to hold it. We were trying to be in the path of progress. We were going to hold it, rent it out, get some cash flow, and catch a swing up. And hopefully sell it in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And make a nice little chunk. And then also just pay less taxes because we held it for a little bit.
Right. A year and a day.
Yep. That's all I need. So we paid $44,000. Thought we could get at least $110,000 out of it. And I thought the rehab was about $25,000 to $30,000. And this is like an older, like early 1900s built house. It's been vacant for a while, had a bunch of stuff in it, and weird layout. But so we were doing paint, carpet, bathrooms. Like, it ended up turning into much more than that. But I thought it would be a quick in and out, 25 rehab. So we're all in it for like 70, 75, sell for 110. that's a decent deal in my book. It wouldn't have been, we would have made 30-ish.
Not a home
it's
run.
Nothing to write home about, but it
good
would have been a
deal.
solid deal. I thought that was definitely going to happen. Just staying high level, I guess. Still, we ended up losing $20,000 on it. Ended up taking over a year to do. Tons of headache. Had to plow. We originally got a hard money loan on it because it was in Cleveland. None of my private money guys were comfortable going up there, so that was another issue.
Sure. So you're paying high interest.
And they want their money back in 6 months, which did not happen. So we did extend multiple times, which is multiple points each time.
Shit.
Yeah, I mean, contractors stole money, permit issues, redoing work, architects had to get involved, structural engineers, tons of issues. So basically, ended up taking over a year of our lives, which my partner had to deal with most of the headache of that, just because he actually runs the contractors and stuff. So his life was even way worse than mine during that time. So ended up losing $20,000 on it roughly, and had to deploy a lot of our own capital because we went so much over budget on rehab.
So how'd the hard money loan? How much did they give you?
They gave us 75.
Purchase and rehab.
Because that's what we thought. But then we had to put 10% of that down.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? So really, they gave us 67 something. But we ended up being all in it for like 130, 125.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So that's like all in. That's like holding costs, utility costs, like all in costs. But all that came out of our pocket.
Right.
Plus the 10% down. Yeah. So all that stuff. Plus it's 3 points up front. 3
points.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Yep. It was like I think we were paying 12% interest and 3 points. And they won their money back in 6 months, which we thought could be done. That's not what happened. So it was I mean, another just quick lesson we learned is like, if you don't know the market and you can't easily manage a contractor, because this is like an hour away from us, so it's not as easy to just drive up there, after work and check how things are going.
Right.
That's another issue. Just kind of all the shit that could have went wrong, and we could have seen it coming, but we didn't. We didn't think about all these things, and we ended up losing a boatload of money. And
So to dive a little deeper into the detail of how, so where would you say it shit started to hit the fan? Like, where did it go wrong? Because it sounds like you got a good deal off the front end.
I think so, and I still tell Rocco, me and Rocco still talk about this, like, I don't think personally, like, obviously hindsight's 20/20, but like, I still don't think I really overpaid for it. Not that I'm trying to not take any of the blame or anything like that, but just based off of what happened. So to answer your question, where we went wrong is we did not have any contractors in Cleveland. We didn't really try very hard to ask for referrals. We found someone on Facebook. That person started the work, didn't pull permits, seemed like things were going fine. They did demo, got the dumpster there, things were going. It was an old small kitchen, so we were tearing out a main wall, and he was putting in a beam, which he already did.
Mm-hmm. Which was lead bearing. So he put the beam in. Yeah.
Yep. And then the city inspector knocked on the door, and he let him in. The contractor let him in, and
so these are huge lessons.
There is where it really went down.
Right. So these are huge lessons, off the rip.
Yep.
Right. So out of your market.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's a big one.
Yep.
So if you're buying out of your market, you have to either have a partner that knows that area, or you have to do some contacts. Or do your freaking research and know that area. And then also, like you said, the contacts, the contractors. You just found one. It wasn't a referrals are the best way to get good contractors.
Yep.
So 2 big lessons right off the rip.
Yep. And just with the contacts thing, if we would have had private money that was willing to lend up there, because I have a good amount of private money down here, they're local to their market too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
they're going to lend on
They
something,
understand
they
the deal.
understand what they're lending on. So
Yep.
that's why they wanted to stay in this area. So that's why we went the private. I mean, just if we could have went my normal private money route, that would have saved us $5,000.
Right.
Just that right
just
there.
Just a help, right?
Yep.
Obviously, still would have ran into some
We
issues,
still would have
but
lost money, but I mean, just
not
that.
as much.
So yeah, out of market, contacts, contractors, the money thing, it's all a perfect recipe for disaster.
Then the contractor opens the door to the city
So
inspector.
then also, I would tell your contractor to never let anyone in unless you know who they are.
and
And
not
while you're there working, lock the door.
yeah.
Or
And that's
Yeah.
just a safety thing. Too.
Yeah.
Like, is they could be doing stuff with power tools. They could, they're replacing a beam, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
things could fall. Like, it's not good to have anyone on a job site in general that's not authorized
supposed to be there. Yep. So once the inspector found all that out, basically he put like a stop all work order on the property. Basically gets like red flagged, and the city knows, and they're going to be watching it now. So we stopped all work, and then like, all right, what do we got to do? Okay, we got to pull all these permits. Okay, so we had to pull like electric permit because he already did that because there was knob and tube in there.
Sure.
So he was replacing the knob and tube. He did like. Because we knocked out that wall and like we're doing
The
some stuff, he had to
structural.
move some plumbing plus the structural,
Yeah.
general construction. We built a deck, little porch on the back. So he did a decent amount, basically all of that except for like the deck part. We were gonna do the deck, that wasn't done yet, but everything else was basically done. It was basically starting to get ready for like start setting fixtures of
Yeah.
tubs and like paint drywall
Yeah.
and paint floor, like
Right.
finish it up.
Right.
And yeah, that cost us like roughly like, I don't know, $14,000 or so far, like material, labor.
So that's how far you were into it before all this shit really started.
Yep. Like the panel was replaced. We did a whole new
Yeah.
panel. Like
Okay.
it was a full electric.
So you
and,
were
like, a
so you
decent
were
amount of plumbing
14.
job,
You were
like-
$14,000 in.
Yep. And
Whenever-
then, so permits had to be pulled. Our contractor we started using started going that route. He was having issues with it. Plus, he wasn't registered with the city as a contractor, so like he had to do that. And this was all during the heat of COVID, so like 2 people at the city were working
So the
part-time.
backup. Yeah.
So it was so far backed up. It took us like 4 months just to get the permit. So like no work is being done, and like we're still paying insurance, utilities, and that hard money interest of like it was like a $700 a month interest payment. So like we're losing $1,000 a month.
Yeah. Just
Easily,
holding it.
just holding it.
Yeah.
So contractor tries to do that. It's taking too long, and then basically he just ghosts us. And
He just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
yeah, he just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
And you already paid him.
We already paid him, so he was somewhat overpaid. So we didn't lose $14,000 because like some of it was
Yeah.
done, but like he was definitely overpaid.
Yeah.
And then he came back and took all the material that was there.
Because he thought it was his.
Yeah.
Even though you bought it for your
Yep.
house.
So I think overall we probably lost, I don't know, like 6 or it's hard to throw a real number on it, but 6 or 7-ish to that
To the
contractor.
contractor.
Because like during all this time, like we had vanity, tub, like tile,
Yeah.
cabinets, like shit was bought and ready to go.
Right.
Because we were waiting so long. Like once we got the green light, we were throwing up drywall and getting it going.
Right.
Yeah,
So you had it all
that was
sitting
all
there.
gone. Yeah,
so you
that
had it
was
all sitting there ready to go, and he fucking took it all.
Yep.
So lesson, right? So if you're gonna buy stuff and it's just gonna sit there for a long period of time and not be
Mhm.
installed, don't leave it on the job site. Put it in
Yep.
a warehouse, in a storage unit, or in your garage
Yep.
or somewhere.
And another lesson is just have a written contract with your contractors, so
Yeah.
they are somewhat liable. If they stole enough money, you can go to court and actually have a good chance of winning.
Yeah.
We thought about taking him to court, but there was no paperwork, and most of the time you're gonna have enough legal fees and long enough headache that it's not worth
it.
6-7K.
Yeah. And do research on your contractor too. Like,
Right.
look them up. Like,
Yep.
Google them. Like, if there's a news article saying they stole money,
Yeah.
that's another
And-
red flag.
I mean,
Not that happened
yeah,
with this
right.
guy, but just
Yep. The thing was, is like this guy like wasn't a bad contractor in terms of like work he did.
Yeah.
Like he actually like it was just him and his wife, and like I mean they worked their nuts off, but yeah, it doesn't matter if they're gonna steal and whatnot. And,
right.
So yeah, there's just some other shady stuff there. So yeah, then we wait 4 months. Finally get the. So that contractor leaves her. We find another one through a referral. He then has to register with the city and get all the permit things situated. So that kills like another month or two. And then finally, all that gets going, and the inspector says, "Yep, like you need to redo all this electric and plumbing and the beam that you already did. Basically, it wasn't good enough for them."
Oh.
So now we have to use
No way.
Have I never told you this story? Okay, I wasn't sure. So you have to use registered contractors.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
for Cleveland.
Yep, for the city of
just
Cleveland.
how it is.
And they are busy and they're expensive because they're actually licensed and, are supposed to know what they're doing. So to redo the electric that was already there and done, basically, they just need to, I don't know what they even did actually, but it was like $7,000 to have them redo this electric. And it was already done. And
it didn't cost that much the first time.
No.
So like ripping out the knob and tube and putting Romex in
And
cost
a new
less.
panel.
Yeah, and the panel cost less than doing it from already redone.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
That's the
Blows
difference.
my fucking mind.
Yep. So then same thing with the plumbing. Like the plumbing was already roughed in. It wasn't like glued. So it wasn't like set.
So that shouldn't be that bad to take out, right? Then.
Well, really, you didn't have to like
do anything.
Right.
Right.
But you just had to glue it and like.
Or if they want to change,
fixtures.
or if they want to change something, they can change it because it's not
right.
glued.
Well, basically, I think these contractors just seen what they had, like they had us, and so it was like $4,500 for him to redo the plumbing that was there.
Did you get it quoted ahead of time, or?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, but like you only
no
have
choice.
so many. Like we picked a couple contractors from their list and got some bids, and they were all astronomical because they were busy and it was COVID, and they're licensed registered contractors.
And they knew what they had.
They charged $200 an hour. That's just what it is. So those were our best options. So now we're just basically another $11,000 just to get back to even. So then the beam situation comes in, and the inspector's like, okay, well, like we need an architect and a structural engineer to draw up plans of is this actually good, even though we already paid to have it done.
Even it's already done.
Yep. So then the architect, so it costs $3,500 just to have the architect and structural engineer draw the plans, not even fix it, just draw the plans.
Well, did it need fixed too?
They decided it needed fixed.
Oh yeah.
So then, thankfully, Rocco built some rapport with this engineer and talked to him. The engineer was gonna go out there one day and do this beam, and it was gonna be another $2,000 on top of his plans. And Rocco was like, I don't know how he did it, but basically he's like, can I go do this? Tell me what beam exactly you want me to buy, and I'll go buy the beam and do it. So, and the structural engineer let him. I don't know how, but he told him where the beam was. The beam was $800. So the structural engineer was going to make $1,200, just for
right.
And
just for knowing where the beam
Rocco
is.
and his brother and a buddy went up there and did it in an hour. It was pretty simple. So that saved us a little bit of money, but it was still a loss.
But
so,
Rocco's just bleeding money.
Yeah, so
money
we already paid $14.
Yeah.
To basically get demo done.
Yeah.
And then we just pay another $15 just to get back to where we were.
It's like death by 1,000 cuts, but you're not getting cut. You're getting stabbed with an axe.
So then, all that gets done.
Jeez.
Permits are good, whatever. They inspect it.
You're back to being able to move forward.
But this is
6 months
9 months later.
9 months in. Oh, geez.
Yeah, because just to draw up the plans, it took 3 or 4 weeks. Because it's not like you call these people and they're like, oh yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. They're like, yeah, I'm 3 weeks out, and then it takes me a while, and then yeah. So nothing was moving fast.
And COVID.
Yeah. So finally, basically, we get back to square one, but now we're out a lot. $15,000.
Another
extra.
15.
Yeah, another.
So
we're
30.
already into the rehab for 30, and we haven't hung drywall yet. So then we get this new contractor who was a referral. He starts hanging drywall, starts doing some stuff like building the deck, which then we find out we had to have like a permit for and like an engineer for. So that was another $1,000 or $2,000 in time.
Because you learned this, the lesson was going through the city, so now you know.
Yep.
Need an engineer, blah, blah, blah.
So then, basically get the stuff done. New bathroom, new kitchen, like paint, flooring everywhere. Basically, we're tidying up. And then the inspector comes out and he's like, yeah, like, I don't like how this exterior paint is. Like, you guys need to either re-side the house.
Is this the same inspector?
I don't know if it is the same inspector or not. I don't know that for a fact. But basically, he said we need to paint the house or side the house, or he's not approving it. So then we go down that route of, we also did brand new HVAC, all new HVAC. So that was like $4K. There's already ductwork, but all new HVAC. Which is funny, we actually forgot to pull the permit for that, and somehow we got away with it. So we find some dude off Facebook again to paint this house.
And it's exterior, right?
Exterior.
So you're thinking, okay.
And now it's like November.
So it needs done.
Yeah, you can't just paint a house
in
anytime.
December, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
like right now is November, and it's cold enough to where it's getting thick.
So luckily this dude didn't screw us. He was pretty I think we paid $3,500, and he went up there and sprayed everything, the trim, made it a nice gray and white, but like it was still old, like shitty siding. So
you just painted the siding then?
Yep, we basically just painted it, $3,500. He didn't screw us. We got lucky with the weather one weekend to where it was like warm enough and he could bang it out. So like that went well, but it was still an extra cost that we weren't expecting.
Right.
And we paid the new contractor like to do the drywall and all the stuff. So like that was another like 16. So like we're in this thing for easily like 45 on the rehab instead of 25.
More than double.
More than
and more than like another
definitely 5. More than double the time frame. Yeah, there's
a
bunch of time passing in between all this. So then we list it. Hold on, let me make sure I'm not missing this.
You're good. I'm gonna make sure this is still going. This is good shit. Yeah, still going. I'm gonna. I just saved that and started saying once you
Okay. Yeah, so then basically we listed the property. So luckily the market wasn't going down during this year; it was going up.
Yeah, so you get to ride the wave.
We rode a little bit of a wave, so all right, we think we could list it for like 125, 130. So we listed it for like 125, and we get a bunch of showings. And it turns out we learned the importance of like a decent contractor. So the second contractor we had, like, he didn't steal our money, he did the stuff, but like he did like pretty shitty work. So all these actual home buyers are going there and they're like, like shoddy work, just like, your corners aren't square and just like some light paint, just not great.
Yeah.
Like photos looked amazing. Like I posted a few photos, on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, and like I got multiple comments like, "Oh, it looks great," but like you go there and it's not as good as it looks.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Anytime you're buying a property or anything, photos hide a lot of the texture and feel, and just not.
When you're selling a property, you want to have good photos,
right?
Because you want to hide anything bad that happened.
But still, if they're gonna walk it, then they're gonna. So
the more people you get in, the more likely they're gonna.
So basically, we had a bunch of showings. A lot of people were saying, "No, not interested." Shoddy work, whatever. Which it wasn't like unsafe, because like the electrical, all the big stuff was done by legit people. We paid $15,000 for the shit, but just like the drywall and the paint,
the stuff that people see,
the cosmetic stuff was all done by a contractor that doesn't do great work. But we also didn't pay him, he made good money off of it, but we needed him more than he needed us at that time. So. Didn't get any real offers for a little bit. We lowered the price once, and then got an offer from an out-of-state buyer, California, for 110, or I think it was 100 at first.
Yeah.
But wanted an inspection, wanted an appraisal, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And like, oh, we'll do 90 for like no inspection, no appraisal or whatever. And we're like thinking about it, we're like, man, like we're gonna take a bath on this thing. Like the other thing is, also let me backtrack. So in the middle of this, when we got called for the permits, we did list the property, like as is, half demoed, half rehab.
Okay,
like let's just take our L now. Right. So like we did do that. We thought about
that's that's another lesson is, the house is always for sale.
Yep.
If
The house is always for sale.
You can put a for sale sign out the day you buy it.
Yep.
Right. And then if someone wants to buy it and pay $10,000 more, you should have wholesaled it. But hey, you still get
whatever.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
So we did think about that. We did list it while we were waiting on permits, and we were just trying to like break even or lose a little bit. But all the offers we got, like I talked to a lot of investors. Obviously investors were buying it, and they're like, there's still a lot of work here. So like I could have basically the best offer we got, we were gonna take a $25,000 L like right now.
True.
Which at the time we weren't willing to do that.
But in hindsight,
probably would have been best because it would have saved a lot of capital, headache, and
time,
we only would have
effort.
we only would have lost like 5,000 more. You know what I mean? And saved a good amount.
Yeah.
But at the time, like.
But we're addicted to opportunity.
Well, not even that, too. We were just in a different cash position, too.
Yeah.
Because we were already shelling cash into this, and, like, then it's like you have to come to, like, when you're flipping a house and you have to come to closing with $20,000 in cash, like, it's not a good day.
So, it's not a good day. It's not.
And we weren't really, like, this was when me and Rocco, like, first started our partnership, so, like, we weren't even really wholesaling much. Like, the only cash we had was like my personal cash, his personal cash, and like we just weren't willing to take a $25,000 L at this time. So like we had a number of 15. Like we would have gone off and took a $15,000 L, we would have took it right then and been done. But we didn't get it. So anyway, an investor from California, we ended up getting them up to 110,000, settling on a price. They did their inspection. There's a couple little things. We fixed it, whatever. Appraisal goes to happen. And it torrential downpours for like 4 days before the appraisal.
In the basement.
Appraiser goes there. There's a little bit of water in the basement. Appraiser says, nope, I can't approve any house that has like water in the basement. We're like, okay.
This is a nightmare.
Seller, the buyer's like talking about backing out or whatever, and we're like, listen, like we'll fix it. Like let us get some quotes. Let's figure out what the issue is. Then he talked to all these foundation guys and waterproofing guys, and all four of them said different things. Some of them said it's the downspouts, drainage. Some said you need a full waterproofing. Some said, so we got all these different quotes and talked to different people, and we were going to do that. So that was going to be like another $9,000. And we talked the seller into like paying like $3,000 of it. Like we were going to pay like $6,000, and they were going to pay like $3,000. To get like waterproofed, like a
full waterproof basement.
Full waterproof basement and a sump pump, like that includes a sump pump, like the thing shouldn't get wet again.
Yeah.
And then luckily,
did you guys know the basement was gonna happen if it rained? So you didn't even know.
No, it's a 1902 built house.
Right.
If it rains hard enough.
Yeah, but you just hadn't noticed that.
No, we didn't walk into the basement anytime and be like, oh yeah, there's like a bunch of water. It was literally the timing of like, I wish I could remember the week, because you could probably look back at the weather and be like, it rained for 4 days straight, like heavy. It's just terrible timing. And even with that, it wasn't like there was a few puddles. It wasn't like you're walking through water.
Yeah, it just got wet. It's an old house. It got wet. Yeah.
So luckily, somehow Rocco talked to the one structural engineer and said, "Hey, can you look at this basement or approve or what deny whatever?" And he talked to the buyer's agent and the buyer and was like, "Yeah, if the structural engineer approves this, we're good with just." I think all we did was paint it. What's that? It's like a special sort of.
You can use kills or you can use.
Not even kills. It's like a dry lock. I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
It was basically for that purpose of wet basements, and we paid the structural engineer a couple $100. He went and looked at it. Said, "Yeah, no, this is good." We paid a couple $100 to paint the basement with this stuff, and the seller agreed to it. We sold it for, I think we netted 107 because the seller like wanted some concessions or something.
I always do. Or the
So
buyer. Yeah.
I mean, basically we were in it for like 127, all in, like holding costs, closing, all this, everything. What's funny is we still got a check at closing for like $40K.
Because our original,
our original hard money loan was 75 or whatever, 70. So like we still walked away closing with a lot of cash, but it was all our own cash.
Right. It's just money you already had into the deal.
Yeah, we just poured into this.
So you got your cash back.
Plus lost one.
Right.
Yeah. So that's basically the story of it. I mean, a lot of bad luck stuff, and I may even be missing some little details, but there were so many. It seemed like every week it was just bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. Oh, my head was just like, no, bad news, bad news. And it was just like, I mean, I hate to say, like, I didn't want to lose 20 grand, but like,
no one does.
It didn't kill us, and like, we seen it through.
Yeah.
Like, we were able to stick through it. We didn't quit.
Yeah.
And kudos to Rocco. Like, he did a lot, the majority of this part of dealing with the contractors and all that stuff and coordinating all that. He was not happy for a long time.
Especially when your partnership just starts.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you guys can make it through that, I think you guys can make it
That's
through
what I mean. Like, we haven't
had...
I mean, we've had issues in deals since, and it's still just like nothing compared to that.
Yeah.
So, we took our loss. We'll use it as a write-off this year, and we learned a lot of lessons that we kind of talked about, and we're moving on.
I mean, there's a lot of lessons learned there.
Yeah.
I mean, just hearing it, like we've talked about this story, but just hearing you go through the entire thing, like because whenever we've had conversations in the past, it's been, oh, this happened, on some other topic. You know, me actually sitting and listening to that, like, you know, even I'm taking away things just because it's Cleveland, you know, and like there's things that you learn by doing a deal like that.
Oh yeah.
Seeing a flip all the way through that goes bad, you learn a shitload.
Mm-hmm.
So we really hope that you listen to that and learn something from that, because that's hearing a bad deal and what happens, like the energy and momentum will keep it going whatever way it's going, and if it's going bad, it's gonna keep going bad. You just gotta learn how to get it back up to going good.
Yep.
But no, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean that was a tough deal, tough year, and like I said, we learned a lot from that one, and we've had a good amount of success after that. I mean, we haven't really touched a whole lot of flips after that, but especially in Cleveland. But actually, at the same time, we were doing another like flip in Cleveland, a different part. And it was way less work, and we didn't have to get we ended up making like, I don't know, 14 grand on or something. It's just like a quick in and out. We literally just painted it and relisted it, but like there were still headaches with that, with like POS inspections and like all the stuff I didn't have to deal with down here.
Right, in Cleveland you have to deal with some of that.
Yeah, and just like ridiculous point of sale inspection stuff. Like some of these inspectors, I don't know where they went to school, but that's for another day. But
for another day.
Yeah.
Wow, dude, that's
hopefully you can top that.
I don't know if I can top that, but first I'm going to make sure this thing's still going, and I'm going to pause it real quick and keep it going. All right, so how do I top that shit? Well, I don't really think I can, but all right, so my worst, it's not a bad deal. That's I want to start off with. Like, this ended up not being a bad deal, and it could have not worked out, and the worst case scenario would have just been a fuckload of a waste of time. Is what the worst thing that could have happened.
That's the nice thing about wholesaling.
That's the nice thing about wholesaling. So, I mean, I could have also lost 5-10 grand on it, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it did not go poorly. You know, we ended up making 40 grand on the deal, and we actually should have made 60, but we ended up shelling 20 of it because we just were pissed off and needed some help getting rid of it. But could have made way more, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, let's start off with what the deal was and how I found it. So, the deal was a portfolio. So, it was a package of properties. So, it was it was 54 units, and I think it was 17 properties that encompassed 54 units. And we found it by email. So we were email blast. We always email blast. We use a service called Reonomy, and we pull lists from multifamily owners, and we get their phone number, at mailing address, email, just straight from there. And we send email blasts out. And this was a third or fourth round email blast. So, they ignored the first 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. Typical, right? So lesson number 1, always follow up. But we found the deal through an email blast. Fortunately, this wasn't listed. It was off market. But the seller was thinking about listing it. He was thinking about taking it to market. But before he did that, he opened our email and said, hey, what the hell, we'll give it a try. Mm-hmm. So he already had all his documents ready to go. So it was actually pretty easy to get it under contract, kind of. So it started off well. The day we found it, we had a phone call with him, and I went, and it was like on a Sunday, and or it was a Saturday we had the phone call, then on the following Sunday, I met up with him, and I picked up all his schedulees. He already had everything ready to go, all the leases for all the properties, pretty much everything you could ever want.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was. He handed to me an envelope, yep. And he said, the only reason we're thinking about doing this with you is because we looked you up, and you have a really nice website, and you just look like a professional person. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know why you even told me that, but but all right. So from now on, we always keep our website up to date, and yep. It may have been a unique person, right? But hey, it worked once. Why not?
Yep.
So then we're like, cool. So we get all the leases and everything, and I looked at them that day and was like, all right, like we need to get this like a signed LOI on this, because we didn't have a contract yet, because we didn't want to use just a normal purchase agreement, because we would have had to do like 16 agreements or 17 mm-hmm. agreements for the properties, because they're all separate properties. So we need an attorney to draft us a new contract. So I got my attorney working on that immediately, and got a letter of intent that just briefly
yep.
outlined the terms of the agreement. And I'm like, hey man, like talking to the seller, I'm gonna give you this letter of intent. Pretty much what it says is, here's what we're buying, here's what we're buying it for, but it's not gonna be official till the purchase agreement, so we can still negotiate a little bit if we need to. Here's the terms, and the only thing that it binds you to is you can't sell it to somebody else for 30 days.
Yep.
And while we work this out, unless I say don't worry about it.
Right.
He's like, all right, that's fine. Fortunately, we got that signed like the following day, so it was like a Monday at this point. We got that signed the following day, because on the Tuesday or Wednesday, he went to talk to his realtor and somebody else, and they were telling him, oh no, list it for way more, bump that price up. He had a couple offers coming in, like after you started talking about selling, because it was a big portfolio. People knew him, So fortunately, we got the signed LOI. That was really, really good. And then we went through about like 2 weeks of negotiating on price, because after he got that in his head that he could get way more, like I think we got the deal for like $600,000, so which was a fucking steal as far as like a cost basis for rental. It was like 12 or 13 grand a door, which is like, it's like a C minus area, but still 12 or 13 grand a door is a killer cost basis.
Yep.
So,
which is the most important thing.
Most important thing. So, but he was, the agent was like, no, you can list this for like $800K. And I'm like, yeah, you probably can, but we're not fucking paying that. So we need to bring that way down. So there was a point where, we were talking about like 700, 650. We got him down. So we negotiated, and pretty much how it worked out was, looking at the property as how it worked out. So you had some properties that were performing really well and some that weren't. So what I told him was, if you take off the top performing property and put that in a separate agreement, I will pay more for that one, and I need a better price on the portfolio because how we're going to finance it. And he said, okay. And it still worked out, because I got the deal down like another 50 grand, but for some reason it worked out for him that way. So I was like, cool. And it worked out for us. In hindsight, that was like a genius move, but never really knew that going.
So what did you end up getting it all?
So the whole thing was $600 for the portfolio, without that property in it, and then it was like 35 for that other property.
Okay.
So it was like 635.
Gotcha.
It would be like the whole thing. But that was the negotiation. It's like, pull that one out, I'll keep the portfolio at the price you need. So it worked out, at least like price for me and him. That was good. But then, contract came along, got it under contract, and we're like, sweet, we're good to go. Fortunately, I have a very good attorney who, in the contract, made it very, very buyer friendly. Now, granted, the seller had every, they looked at it, they had their people look at it, they didn't see any issues, but it was very buyer friendly. So we had a very long due diligence period, and we had the right to extend it again. So we had either 45 or 60 days for due diligence, and then we could do like another 30-day extension if we needed to, which was really nice because we ended up needing it. So, because like we're like, all right, we're gonna take this down. This is only $600,000. Like, all we need to do is like raise like $120,000, take this whole thing down, get a loan on it. Not a big deal. So, like, let's move.
Did you see the properties yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. So, and that's the thing is like, I want to get this under contract as fast as possible. So that's another lesson. Like, you don't have to see a property to get under contract. No. So you have your due diligence period. So then, that was like pretty much the next step was try work on financing and go do a property walkthrough. So we scheduled the property walkthrough. I tell you what, like walking that many units in one day, one building's okay, but like when you're a scattered site and you're going to that many, pain in the ass. Yeah. So like that was like just a whole other thing, getting all those units scheduled to walk through on one day, like at different buildings and stuff. It was a logistical nightmare for all of us that were involved, but it worked out. It wasn't that bad.
Who'd you have with you on the walkthrough? I
had that's probably didn't actually get to you. So I had a partner on the deal, and because he was gonna sign on the loan, and we're gonna raise the money, and he had one of his interns or something go with me to walk the properties and just take photos and stuff. Yep. So it was nice to have someone there too, because it's just like you'll miss stuff, it's that many years.
Especially that many.
Yeah. It's nice to have multiple people there. And it was in the middle of COVID. So walking through, like, this is when everyone's like, N95 and up, like, freaking the fuck out. And we're walking through 50-some people's homes.
Right.
And they're not the best, like, living condition homes. Like, some of them, like, you don't even want to go, right? But before we even did that, we got, like, photos from the seller to, like, send to the lenders, see if we could even finance this. And it turned out, like the lender was like, yeah, like we can finance this, like they just have to be this ARV, and like, like we have a box that they have to fit in for the lender that we were going with. What turned out happening was after we sent them all the photos and sent them their spreadsheet of the ARV, and we pulled comps and did everything, there was like 7 of the properties that they wanted us to either take out of the package or we had to buy them cash because they didn't fit their model. Okay. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. We have to, but we're like, okay, we'll just raise more money, whatever. Then the partner got a little weary about doing the deal because it was in the middle of COVID and people didn't have to pay rent. So taking on that many units, whenever people don't have to pay rent in a lower income area, when people don't have jobs sometimes, like didn't want to get into the deal anymore. So he's trying to back out, and I'm like, okay. But he's like, I'm not going to back out and leave you high and dry. I have a guy who wants to do this deal. He's got a lot of cash. You guys work together. Cool. So he's actually saying, okay, I'm going to take this deal down cash, and we're just going to do everything cash, and then we're just going to refi or sell it, and that's going to be the exit. I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. Like, not really, But big lesson, I'm not the one driving the deal. It's my deal.
Right.
And that was a big mistake. So it's my deal. I should have been making that call and driving, but I didn't really know.
Well, the same. Yeah, you were less experienced, and like this was a bigger deal than you were used to, and sometimes, sometimes when you bring partners on, you want to trust them, but at the same time, if you let them control or drive the whole deal, like you definitely lose out on
big time. So that happened, and eventually, and mind you, months are going by during this. So the seller is getting a little like, hey, is your due diligence done? Like, can we, like, then I'm like, no, we need an extension, right? And he's like, well, you have it in the contract, okay. So we get the extension. And at like 2 weeks before the extension, like, expires, the buyer with all the cash, or like the partner with all the cash, just says, you know what, because of everything going on, I don't want to do the deal. I'm like, fuck. Like, so now I'm sitting, so I've not passed my due diligence period yet. Like, I can still back out. But I want to do this deal.
Right.
But I don't want to, like, 2 weeks more, and I'm locked into this deal.
How much earnest money did you have?
So that was the other thing. My attorney drafted the agreement with 0 earnest money in the deal.
Okay, so you're solid.
So that's the thing. Typically, I should have been in 10 grand, 20 grand earnest money into this deal, but I wasn't. So that's another reason why I was like, okay, we're just going to plow through this and keep going.
But that can also be an issue.
It can be an issue because
if they do decide to go on after you and sue you, like a lot of times agreements say like the sole remedy of backing out of this deal is just the earnest money.
Right.
And at least, okay, if you do get sued or whatever, like, okay, you keep my earnest money.
Right.
You lose. But if you have no earnest money,
and I don't remember what that
go,
contract specifically said. It may have even said it in there and just didn't.
Didn't put it up. Yeah, I mean that happens.
Yeah. I don't really remember, but like I said, it was a buyer-friendly contract.
Yep.
But anyways, so with that being said, all right, we proceeded. And I was like, I'm going to take this down. So the only other lenders I could find that would touch it at the time, because money just dried up in the middle of, like, when COVID was going on. Like, a lot of bank lender money on investment properties was drying up.
Yep.
And this was more of a unique deal. So local banks were still, they said, yeah, we'll do it. But we need 16 or 17 for the one that was separate, 16 separate contracts and 16 separate loans. And I'm like, dude, fuck that. Like, that's not happening. And you'd have to, like, raise them. Like, it was just very, very complicated. So going through all that, I'm like, okay. And then now I'm getting weary. I'm like, 2 really experienced investors backed out of this, what I seem to think is a really good deal. Mm-hmm. They're really experienced. They have, like, multiple hundreds of units.
Yep.
Like, what am I not seeing? And it was, what's going on? The people aren't paying rent.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this deal. I'm going to wholesale it. So that was whenever I made the decision to wholesale. I actually went
basically like 2 weeks left.
You're right. I went to it. Well, actually, at that point, it was like a couple days. Okay, I left in the due diligence period. So I went to a mastermind event, came back. I had like 2 days left, and I'm like, I'm wholesaling this thing. And so I blast out to like 10,000 people because I have a list that has like 10,000 emails on it that I don't use to its fullest extent ever because you just get way too many emails back. Yeah. But I was like, I gotta fucking sell this thing, or the contract, right? So I'm blasting this out to 10,000 people, getting a lot of responses back, but I'm like, I need more time. So I asked for another extension, and at this point, I don't know what to tell the seller because it's not financing I'm going after. Right. It's because I don't know how he's gonna feel about wholesaling.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, look. I need to bring on another partner in this deal.
Yep.
And, partner's backed out, and I just told him, I don't think I could finance this by myself. I didn't know for a fact if I could or not because the banks were being weird. But I don't think I can by myself. I need somebody to come on. So he agreed.
Which, the seller sounds pretty cool.
He was the coolest seller
That's
ever.
Good.
Like, it had been me, I'd been like, we're out, bro. Like, no fucking way. So it proceeded on for another 30 days. And I, being, just excited, ready to go. So I have an assignment agreement. But because I was just so excited that I found a buyer who wants to pay cash, he's ready to go, doesn't want a loan or anything in this deal, I drafted up, because I didn't have my computer on me, I literally drafted up an assignment agreement on my phone in Google Docs, saved it as a PDF, and sent it to him. And got it signed. It was a Friday at 5, or it was like 3 o'clock. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, fuck it. Like, we're going to get this assigned before Friday so the title company has it, and we're good. I can go party on the weekend and feel good about it, right? So I forget to add a non-refundable deposit to the assignment agreement. And that's a big lesson because if there's no non-refundable deposit, they don't give a shit.
Right.
It's assigned, but they could just as easily just walk away and not lose anything. Mm-hmm. So, I didn't forget the deposit. I forgot to put a time frame on the deposit. And I didn't put a lot. It was whatever. It was a few grand. I had nothing into it, so I didn't really think to put a lot in it. But it was, I didn't say, hey, it needs to be a title company by X day. Mm-hmm. I didn't put that on there. So they could, in theory, put it whenever it wanted.
Right.
Yeah. So That's what happened. But anyway, so learn a lesson there. Use your agreement that you always have. Don't draft something up and just make
get
sure
as much earnest money as you can, non-refundable.
Right, exactly.
And another lesson is if you can, get the earnest money to you.
Right.
Not the title company.
Right.
It's a lot easier to
get
fight
it back.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and definitely the time frame the earnest money
has to be in by this day. It has to be wired and in by this day, whatever.
Yep.
So eventually he does send the earnest money.
That's
Which was good, but it was like 2 or 3 weeks down the road, and he had like flown up to look at the properties and everything, and like that was cool. And we went to dinner, spent like $300 on dinner. Like I'm like, sweet, we're good. Like this is fine. But then like he went like radio silence, and that's the key that I know that something's wrong.
Right.
Right. And I guess like the next thing I get is a call from a random lender saying, yeah. I'm using a pseudonym. It's not really his name. Yeah, Ryan wants to, get a loan for this property. I heard, and I'm like, what? So then I fucking bitch him out. I'm like,
right, because it's supposed to be cash.
Yeah, right, it's supposed to be cash. So eventually, like, we go like another month and a half into this deal, and over the course of some, time frame in there, I explain to the seller what's going on. Mm-hmm. I tell him, look, here's what's going to happen. I have a partner in this deal. He wants to take it down. He doesn't want me in the deal. So I'm just going to take a fee and assign him the deal. Are you cool with that? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. So...
if only were that easy.
Only it were always that easy, right? Yeah. And like there were he had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But he was like, whatever. So,
and that's part of building rapport and trust with the seller.
And that was what saved this entire deal, is actually building trust with the seller. Because had I not had trust with the seller, he didn't trust me, we'd have been fucked.
Yeah.
But then this guy backs out. Because he went radio silent again, and I bitch him out, and eventually he's past his time period. The seller's like, hey, like, can I just walk? Like, and I'm like, because and then he, I get him to eventually sign a release, and he walks. Okay.
The seller.
No. The buyer.
Yep. And you gave him his earnest money back?
No.
Okay.
It was it was non-refundable.
Yep.
It just was not. It's supposed to be in by that time period. That's what I screwed up on. But so I got to keep that. But then the seller's like, so where's the earnest money? And I'm like, so technically, you don't actually have any earnest money because that was a contract with me, and I assigned it to him, and that really goes to me, and and he's like, what the fuck? Like, he was like, I trust you, blah, blah, it gets all, and I eventually calmed him down and explained to him how wholesaling works and how assignments of contract work. And he's like, okay, well, even though I've been doing this for 40 years, clearly I don't understand how this shit works. And he was being honest. He's like, hey, I learned something today. And I said, look, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you half of this non-refundable deposit. Yeah. And we're going to get this deal done. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay. I'm like, sweet. Let's fucking go.
Which really, it was like what, $2,000 or something?
It was like $5,000, and we split it. It was like $2,500, okay. Whatever. It wasn't much. So cool, right? So then I get another guy who wants to take this deal down, and I'm gonna make sure this is on, just because it's running low on battery. And we're good. Keep trucking. So I get another guy that wants to take this deal down, and he's a foreign guy, and he wants to pay like $800,000 for this fucking deal, and I'm like, fuck yeah! Like I'm about to sign from a $600,000. I'm about to make like $200,000 on this deal, and I'm like, this is exactly why I got into real estate. This is like I'm hyped. I'm fucking hyped. But the problem was, I didn't find this guy. There was another wholesaler when I posted this or whatever who knew this guy. And it wasn't just him. There were like 6 wholesalers that knew this guy and all were shopping this deal at this guy. Mm-hmm. And eventually, after I talked to some people, I'm like, all right, who all knows this mother effer? And then I said, all right, here's what's going to happen. because I'm a nice guy, we're all going to get a cut of this. And except this guy who tried to dick me and say, oh, I'll give you 10 grand, you know, we're not going to make much on the other. He was going to take the 180 grand or whatever. So I'm like, this guy's out. And we're gonna split this deal. All right? And I'm going to take 70, and you guys are going to take the rest and split it up. I was happy with that.
Yep.
Problem is, this guy who's foreign wanted to do another walkthrough, an inspection. The seller was absolutely not doing another inspection because it was COVID, and he got fined for just doing a walkthrough that he did on his own to go check something. They got reported to fair housing, and because of COVID, he had to pay like $5 grand as a fee.
What?
Yeah. So the seller just said, nope. I'll keep all the properties. I'm not doing paying $5 grand a unit. Right. That was non-negotiable. Yep. So I said, okay. Now I got to sell this contract.
Sight unseen.
Sight unseen.
Which is tough.
And he, like this guy, that was a foreign guy, he's out. So everyone's pissed. Right? Everyone's so pissed.
Yep.
But I'm like, I'm sorry, that is what it is.
It is what it is.
But at this point in time, the seller and me are like getting close because we're talking every day.
Yep.
So he's trusts me now, and eventually I find somebody else on Craigslist of all places. Okay, and it was another wholesaler, but he knew a buyer in California. So both right, knew a buyer in California, and their company was willing to take the deal down. They were willing to pay $660. And this guy that I was working with wanted 20. I was going to get 40. I should have just taken most of that fee, and I probably should have upcharged him. Yeah. But got 80 or whatever, 680 or 700 even. But I said, you know what? I'm not going to be greedy because pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered.
Yep. And you already been through so much.
I've been through so much. Yeah. Already. I'm just said, fuck it. We're just going to assign this deal, and we're going to use the right assignment. So we think everything's good. Because they're willing to buy no inspection, everything like that.
Yep.
Cool. We think it's all good until the day for the earnest money to come in doesn't show up.
Yep.
I'm like, God damn it. Here we go again. Right? It's the whole, I'm just thinking, what is going on? So eventually, I'm telling this guy, I'm going to pull the deal, whatever, goes through this whole process again. And eventually, he literally takes, I don't know if he was just busy or what, but he took a video of him walking into the bank with a stack of cash and wiring the money because it was $7 grand for the non-refundable. And he literally took a photo so I wouldn't pull the deal. And I'm like, okay. So got that, and then we were on track to close around this time of the year. Actually, it was last year. Around this time of the year, and then got a week before closing, hey, we need an extension. There we go again. At this point in time, the seller's like, fuck it, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. And so I'm like...
So you're on 3 extensions.
I'm on 6 extensions.
Yeah, you're on a lot.
Yeah. So we extend again, and then that happens again. But luckily, I extended them 2 weeks, but the assignment 2 weeks, but I extended the seller a month.
I always do that. Yep.
So
I always keep my assignments so there's time.
It gave us more time.
Yep.
And then it got close again. It was the last day. And then the buyer says, hey, we can't do it at our title company or your title company. We got to use our title company. I'm like, fuck you mean? Yeah. You got to switch title company? So this title company's been through with this whole deal, all these assignments, everything. They've done all this work for this deal, and they're like, "Well, we're not going to release the information to this title company because we've done all this work." And
they need paid.
And I'm like, "Okay, so what can we do to move this deal to this title company, and you send them all the documents so we can close on Monday with this title company?" And eventually, they're like, "Well, we got $3 or $4 grand worth of work here," and I'm like, so then I ended up coming out of pocket because I had non-refundable from the other guy. I'm like, whatever. So I take 3 or 4, I think it was $3,500, something like that. $3,200. Take the money and pay the title company out of pocket, and they get everything to the other title company. it's at the other title company, and we think it's all going to close. And literally the night before the buyer signs, the seller's already signed.
Mm-hmm.
The night before the buyer signs, he calls me and says, "Hey, can they do like a land contract or something? Like, can they, just?" I'm like, "No, no. Like, you are buying this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, you are buying this tomorrow." And he figured it out, and he closed the deal, and we all got paid.
Nice.
But, like, I'm going to make sure this is still on. But it was.